Thank you, Brother Mohamed Noor, the co-founder of the International Halal Conference. It's a great honor to present at the second edition of the International Halal Conference. I will be talking on the topic of pitfalls in halal supply chain. I will be covering the topic of the evolution of halal, the halal supply chain, the why, the what, and the how. Collaboration in the halal supply chain, and also a very interesting case study in Indonesia on modern halal valley. Finally, I will be sharing the way forward regarding supply chains. On the right, you see my new book on halal business management. This will be published by December this year, which also has a big focus on halal supply chain management. I will be now moving into the first topic, the evolution of halal. When we're talking about the evolution of halal, it's always good to start with a starting point. What is halal all about? And what we learn from the Holy Quran, the second chapter, verse 168, is, "Oh, you people, eat what is on earth, lawful, halal, and good, toyib, and do not follow the footstep of the evil one, for he is to you an avowed enemy." So the Holy Quran teaches us the importance of halal, as well as toyib, good and wholesome. I would also like to share with you an important definition by late Abdul Hamid Evans, a good friend of mine, where he defined halal as the following. He defined halal as it's a portion of God's gift to mankind, lawful, wholesome, safe, healthy, and pleasing. Halal is not just about the end product, it's the entire process. It's a trust, an honor, and a responsibility. Important what we can learn from his definition is that halal goes beyond the technical meaning of lawful. There should be an equal focus also on wholesome, safe, healthy, and pleasing on the toyib side. Secondly, halal should not be limited to a product approach to halal, but should cover the entire process, the entire supply chain. Halal is also related to trust, which should be protected through standards and also regulation. And there are halal standards all over the world developed, and also currently SMIC is developing an international series of halal standards. Finally, halal is also an honor and responsibility, not only to consume, but I also would like to stress also a responsibility and honor to provide, to produce for the world. More on that one later. In my work as an academic doing research on halal supply chain management, I created the evolution of halal to share, to better understand the dynamics in the halal industry that are at play. I see the evolution of halal as four important phases. The first phase is the Muslim company, where the trust in halal is based on the relationship you have with the seller. Is the seller a Muslim? And then you assume that the product he is selling to you are halal. Secondly, the second phase is the halal product, where there's an independent halal certification body that verifies the ingredients, production process are halal compliant, and that there is a halal assurance system into place that ensures a proper management and control of halal integrity and making sure that people are trained. The third stage in the evolution of halal is the halal supply chain, where halal is addressed beyond the product and production facility end to end, from source to the point of consumer purchase. The final stage of the evolution of halal is the halal value chain, where halal is addressed beyond the supply chain, also in areas as Islamic banking and finance, sustainability, is child labor being used, and many more components, such as in halal branding and marketing. Evidence shows that a lot of Muslim countries move to stage 3, the halal supply chain. Halal value chain is still future music, although you can certainly already champion a few components of the halal value chain at this stage. What they also did is to apply the evolution of halal to the maturity of a company, where also a company can assess at what stage is my company in, at level 1, 2, 3, or 4. And what I did I created an halal maturity checklist also for companies to assess at what level is my company. And I did it by asking 10 very simple questions. So the first question is, does your organization have a halal assurance system manual? Is your organization halal certified by a halal certification body? Are your operations, purchasing, and logistics staff trained on halal? If there are any no's to these questions, then you are at level 1 at the Muslim company. If you're all yeses there, the first 3, then you move further. Does your halal assurance system cover transportation and storage requirements for all ingredients, products, components sourced and distributed of your final products? Do these sourcing and distribution contracts have a halal clause? And is halal covered during the audit of supply chain partners? Does your organization have a halal supply chain risk prevention, risk mitigation, and a risk recovery plan? Any no's here, you're at level 2. If you're all yeses here until question 6, you move on to question 7. Does your organization have Islamic branding and marketing SOPs or guidelines? Has your organization replaced animals with plant-based ingredients, components where possible? Does your organization have a green program in place covering areas such as waste reduction, green energy, and water management? And finally, does your organization use Islamic banking and takaful where possible? Any no's here in the question 7 to 10, you're at level 3, the halal supply chain, which is still very good. If you have yeses, all 10, then you're at level 4. And the halal value chain, and only a very few companies, if any, are at the stage of full maturity. If you want to download this halal maturity checklist, go to my website. What are the halal mega trends important for the halal industry? I think, first of all, next to food, also non-food need to be halal certified. Halal certification started with meat, expanded to food, went to cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, also Islamic fashion, and it goes to many more industries. It started with food, but is going to a lot of new industries. Secondly, it is not good enough to take a product approach to halal. It needs to be end-to-end, a supply chain. And thirdly, important to protect your license to operate when you're doing business in Muslim countries is to address halal risk and reputation management. And Ms. Rosie will present in the next, as a next speaker, more on this topic of halal risk management, a very important topic to address for companies active in the halal industry. If we talk about the halal supply chain, it's important to address, first of all, why do we need a halal supply chain? What the product approach to halal gives us is the following, is that we have a supply chain from factory, for example, to retailer. A product approach to halal says, well, we address food safety or product safety throughout the supply chain, end to end, but halal assurance we only address within our factory compound, looking at the ingredients in our production, what happens in our factory. Halal is not addressed any further than this. So the problem is that you have a different approach to food safety or product safety as compared to halal, which is resulting in a situation that halal supply chains are broken and the halal integrity is possibly compromised at the point of consumer purchase at the retailer or at the restaurant. Thirdly, also brand owners are exposed. They could possibly lose the license to operate. They might also lose the halal certificate Because you have to realize that halal standards today, like in Malaysia and Indonesia, but also many other Muslim countries, they require that in order to earn your halal certificate, halal needs to be segregated in transport and storage from non-halal. Not all halal certification bodies are checking this, are enforcing this. But if you fail to comply, they could possibly take your halal certificate away. And that's real damaging. If you lose your halal certificate, that normally doesn't go unpunished in the markets, in the Muslim markets you're operating in. So why do we need halal supply chain management? It's very important for the Muslim consumer to trust your products you're serving those Muslim markets in. Secondly, it's also very important for brand owners. And nowadays, with a handphone, it only takes a matter of minutes to find out that the brand in the supermarket is part of a bigger network and who are the corporation behind there. So companies today, with the modern invention of the internet, are highly exposed to halal issues. It takes a matter of minutes to find out which other brands are also a part of that tree and can infect the entire organization and brands. So yes, halal supply chain is important for the Muslim consumer, but also very important for proper reputation management of your company and to protect your license to operate. So if you talk about the halal supply chain, what is a halal supply chain? Well, if we talk about the halal supply chain, we need to take a supply chain approach to halal. So similar to food safety, product safety, halal needs to be addressed from source to the point of consumer purchase. It's about controlling the entire supply chain with regards to the halal integrity and hereby protecting your corporate halal reputation. So there are two important questions. And what is a halal supply chain? And secondly, where is the beginning and end of a halal supply chain? Now, when you talk about a chain, you assume a one-to-one relationship, but the actual fact is that the halal supply chain looks more like a network, as in this picture. A complex network where we have different relationships and also a different degree of importance of relationships. So we have important process links, which we call managed process links. These are critical for halal integrity, for example, the supplier of ingredients or primary packaging materials, or a link with your distributors, your customers. We also have monitored process links, which are not as critical as the managed process links, but are, for example, suppliers of machine tools, tertiary packaging. And we have not managed process links. So these are supplies or deliveries where you're not really actively involved, where you trust other parties to manage these processes. That can be a supply of, for example, pencils, which don't go into your product. So you trust other people to manage the quality of those. So it's good to map your halal supply chain, first of all. So where's the beginning and the end? It's good to identify who is the real source of your halal supply chain and who are your end customers in here. So map your halal supply chain, which is today a very complex network. Some definitions on halal supply chain and halal supply chain management. These are definitions I developed in my research on halal supply chain. I see a halal supply chain as a complex network of connected and interdependent organizations working together to manage, control, and also improve the materials flow, but also the information flow. And on the information flow, more later. These should be in compliance with the principles of Islamic law, Sharia. When we talk about halal supply chain management, it's a management of this complex network with the goal to extend the halal integrity from source up to the point of consumer purchase. The purchase they hand over to the consumer, which can be at the supermarket or, for example, at the restaurant. So what we want to achieve at the end is halal compliance throughout the network, from source up to the customer. So how can we achieve that halal supply chain? When we talk about the halal supply chain, the foundations of the halal supply chain, I described in this picture. So there are three important components to address. First of all, the issue of direct contact of halal with haram, the forbidden. We call that cross-contamination. A second component you need to address in the halal supply chain is the risk of contamination, to minimize that risk of contamination. And finally, the perception of the Muslim consumer is important, which is addressed by the Islamic schools of thought, fatwas, the religious rulings, and local customs. The first two building blocks are based on the product characteristics. So if it's a bulk product, which is open touching, the transport units often exposed to the air, which is more sensitive as compared to a product which is packed, unitized. Is the product in temperature control, a cool chain, which also has moisture development, or is ambient, the same temperature as outside, which is a dry environment, which is less sensitive. Finally, if you talk about the perception of the Muslim consumer, it's important to address, is this product destined for a Muslim country, Muslim majority country, or is it going to a non-Muslim country? In my research, I discovered that if you send products to a Muslim country, Muslim majority country, you need to address all three components. If you are sending products to a non-Muslim country, you have to address only the cross-contamination and risk of contamination aspects. So how does it work in practice? How can we do this? How can we address cross-contamination? How can we address the risk of contamination and the perception of the Muslim consumer in the supply chain? The direct contact with haram, cross-contamination, can be avoided by proper packaging. As a unitization is an important tool to address cross-contamination, to avoid cross-contamination. If you talk about the risk of contamination, it can be avoided by proper segregation of halal with non-halal. So in that picture, you see a halal warehouse in Indonesia, in Tanjung Priok, operated by IPC Logistics. They have a dedicated warehouse for halal. They also put halal supply chain on their cargo to identify halal. They put halal supply chain on the freight documents. They put also halal supply chain on the container to show that this container has halal products inside. Finally, the perception of the Muslim consumer can be addressed by, for example, requirements which are imported in certain Islamic markets. So in the Shafi'i school of thought in South Asia, ritual cleansing is important. Also, a certain further segregation might be required between different levels of halal, which is important for a country like Brunei. So these are important factors you have to address when designing a supply chain, looking at the product characteristics, market requirements, and then applying these principles in your halal supply chain. So what does it mean for your supply chain partners to address the requirements in transportation, storage, and terminal operations, so like for the seaport and airport, and putting those requirements in contracts with your supply chain partners. So what are important mistakes made by the industry, what I see? First of all, what I see that a lot of industries don't have a halal supply chain strategy. They have a supply chain strategy, but not a halal supply chain strategy. There's no collaboration with other parties in the supply chain, leaving a lot of halal synergy advantages left on the table. What I also see is that there's no halal supply chain operations blueprint. There might be some general supply chain operations written on paper, but not a halal supply chain operation blueprint. How you control the halal supply chain, how you control the halal integrity from source to the point of consumer purchase. Then the last mile in logistics is the last parts of your supply chain, connecting, bringing products to the supermarkets, bringing products to the restaurants. In that last mile in the logistics, in the supply chain, we see that a lot of products, halal products, are mixed with non-halal products. Even in Muslim countries, this happens. What we also see is that there are a lot of also halal e-commerce portals where halal is not addressed in the logistics. So you assume as a Muslim consumer, you go to an e-commerce portal, an halal e-commerce portal, where everything is supposed to be addressed. But at the end, your delivery of your halal products to your home is done by a logistics service provider which is not halal certified or doesn't have any halal assurance system into place, and is mixing your halal products with non-halal product in the last mile. This is a waste where the brand owner has put a lot of effort in place to protect the entire supply chain, and where in the last mile the halal integrity in the halal supply chain is broken. I've been assisting a lot of companies in obtaining a halal certificate and in building the halal assurance system. What I often see with companies in the industry that are halal certified already is that the supply chain is not addressed in the halal assurance system, and also that the supply chain is not being audited. So the halal audit only takes place in the factory or at some selected supplier, but not throughout the supply chain, not in a distribution channel and beyond that. When we are doing assessments or gap analysis in supply chains, we often find that in the contracts with suppliers, in the contract with distributors, in the contracts with logistics service providers, that there is a contract clause regarding food safety, a contract clause regarding hygiene levels, pest management in the facilities, but there's nothing written on halal. There's no halal clause, which you can argue, which is very strange. And I argue is a very high risk to have that not covered in your contracts with your supply chain partners. Often, the next topic 6 is another mistake, is that a lot of big companies, they have crisis manuals. It tells you exactly what to do when a CEO is kidnapped. Very important, of course. If something is found in a product that doesn't belong there, a piece of metal in the beverage or food product, it doesn't belong there, what to do. Until now, I have found very few complete halal crisis manuals and also risk mitigation manuals to address a halal risk. And I can tell you from experience that a halal risk and halal issue is very different from a contamination issue that happened somewhere. Your responses are very different and can really bring you in trouble when you apply or when you assume a halal issue is the same as a contamination issue. This is not the case, and it needs to be treated differently. So please address halal risks in detail in your risk mitigation and crisis manuals. Finally, it's good and important to measure your halal performance. So what are your halal KPIs, your key performance indicators? Do you have a halal dashboard? And what I often see is that the only KPI is if there were any halal complaints or halal issues reported to the halal committee. That's not enough. So you need to create a more complex set, a more complete set of halal KPIs and halal dashboard to manage halal supply chain more effectively. So the element of collaboration is very important in halal supply chains. Let me share with you more. Why do we want to collaborate? First of all, we want to create synergy advantages in halal supply chains. Supply chain should be robust, should be effective, and should be also very efficient. We cannot afford that halal supply chains are more costly than conventional supply chains. So the performance of halal supply chains need to be safeguarded by proper measuring and by working together in halal supply chains. There are two ways to work together in a supply chain. First of all, by collaborating within your own supply chain, also known as vertical collaboration. So you can work directly with your suppliers, with your customers, with your distributors, or you can work with logistics service providers to do that. The halal cluster and halal economic zone is a very effective method of collaboration in your own supply chain. I will share with you in the case study on modern Halal Valley. You can also work with a logistics service provider, that international player like DB Schenker. They're an international player. They are based in a lot of countries. They are halal certified, and they can also help you to better manage an end-to-end halal supply chain. So the advantage, the benefit of collaboration within your own supply chain is that you can better control halal integrity through a reference to an international halal supply chain standard. The SMIC is currently working on developing a halal supply chain standard, and the module TC10. Also allowing you to communicate the halal status effectively throughout the supply chain from source to the point of consumer purchase. Also use dedicated halal assets, for example, or crates or pallets throughout the supply chain, which you use from the farm all the way to retail. And also you can better optimize and reduce costs in your supply chain by working together. A second way, a method of collaboration is horizontal collaboration, where you work together with your competitors, where other industry players that produce similar products like yourself. You can do this, for example, on event basis, for example, supplying products for the Hajj, Umrah, where you work together with your competitor to reduce cost, or in case of a natural disaster, where you work together to supply certain areas that are affected. You can also leverage contracts from each other. So Nestle, for example, has a very good warehouse contract. Unilever, a very good transportation contract. So you can utilize the best contracts in your supply chain operation. You can also opt for working together permanently. That is a quite sensitive topic for a lot of big companies. Finally, if you really find working together with other industry players too sensitive, you can always leave this to logistics service providers that can facilitate collaboration as well on your behalf. So what are the benefits of horizontal collaboration? Sharing of information, better sharing of the halal supply chain status. Also the halal specifications, is the meat machine slaughtered or not, or has stunning be applied. Pooling of resources is important, where you make use of common assets, a common warehouse or common set of halal trucks, and that you create bigger volumes of halal goods flows, very important for the last mile, or when you do air shipments, which are very expensive to have a dedicated air cargo units. So for air freight, bundling of halal volumes can be very lucrative to do this. Logistics service providers that are halal certified and have a halal assurance system into place that can facilitate in these areas as well. So collaboration is very important, vertically and horizontal collaboration. Vertical collaboration can also be facilitated very well by clustering. And modern Halal Valley is a good example of a halal cluster in Indonesia. So Indonesia is the largest halal food market. There's also the largest halal the Muslim population. It is the second largest halal cosmetics market, third largest modest fashion market, and fourth largest halal pharmaceutical market. So Indonesia as a market is a halal market you cannot afford to ignore. Modern Halal Valley is an advanced halal industrial cluster in Indonesia. It's located on the island of Java. This month it received the Halal Industry Zone Certificate from the Ministry of Industry and is hereby the first industrial zone in Indonesia to receive that important recognition. So Modern Halal Valley is open for business, and a lot of land has been already sold to big industries. Modern Halal Valley is a 500 hectares development on the island of Java, only 1 hour drive from Jakarta, and about 1 hour also drive to the seaport Tanjung Priok. They are currently developing a connection also to the railway system of Indonesia, connecting Modern Halal Valley also directly to the main gateway of Indonesia called Tanjung Priok, which is the largest seaport of Indonesia. Modern Halal Valley also has a direct highway access, which makes it a very logistics good location to produce halal for Indonesia, but also for the world. If we look at the design of Modern Halal Valley, it is a 500 hectares development. It has an area for food production and also non-food production. It has an area in blue on the top left corner dedicated for logistics, cold room complexes, and also ambient storage. It has an area for SMEs, which we developing high quality HACCP grade production facilities for the smaller players, SMEs, and smaller micro SMEs to produce products for the bigger industries or for export. The left bottom it says a dry port. So dry port is a logistics area which has also a connection to the railway infrastructure, connecting Modern Halal Valley to the seaport Tanjung Priok. We also have a commercial area which is place for universities to do education on halal, R&D on halal. We have also the national labs, the halal labs in our park, and also space for Islamic banks, finance, and trading. So a very complete cluster. The water for the industries is also certified halal by Majelis Ulama Indonesia, which is the Indonesian halal certification body. So in other words, a complete cluster is being developed in Indonesia to produce for the largest halal market, but also to produce for the entire world. In designing Modern Halal Valley, we have an important number of building blocks. First of all, we have a close collaboration with the local but also national government agencies, important in halal certification, also in halal industry development. We work, of course, with these industries in big industry programs, but also we have SME programs to help the smaller players to support the right volumes with the right quality specs for the industries. Education and research plays an important role to ensure innovation of the halal cluster. And we have also created farmer programs to make sure that we have sufficient supply of products to the industries of the right volumes and of the right quality. So what are the benefits of clusters such as Modern Halal Valley? Well, Modern Halal Valley is very different from a conventional industrial park. It's creating a complete halal ecosystem for producers to produce halal for the world. Also, Modern Halal Valley, we simplify halal and halal system for you to make it easier to move from a product approach to a supply chain approach to a halal value chain approach, which is coming as well. And Modern Halal Valley also provides access to raw materials, to farms, to supply, and also supporting industry for the various programs we developed. Indonesia is well known to have a well-educated workforce, relatively low cost as compared to surrounding countries, and it is a large labor force which you can fully depend on. Market access to Indonesia is important, as Indonesia is the largest halal market in the world, but also has excellent infrastructure via seaports and airports and airlines to export also to important other markets in Asia, but also to other parts of the world. Modern Halal Valley is an excellent location on the important island of Java, which has all the main gateways, logistic gateways of Indonesia. So connecting via road, sea, air, and soon also via rail. In the Modern Halal Valley, also a halal cluster network was developed, an international halal cluster network to link the local halal clusters within Indonesia together, but also to link the halal cluster, Modern Halal Valley, and the Indonesian halal clusters to other clusters in the world, such as in parts of Europe, we connect to Spain, as well as other parts of Asia. We are expanding this international halal cluster fast. And if you have a halal cluster in your country and you're not connected yet to the halal cluster network, it's important to get in contact with us. What we want with the halal cluster network to achieve those halal synergies, which are so important for the halal industry, to connect supply, demand together, and to create those synergy advantages by working together. So what is the way forward if you talk about the halal supply chain and also the pitfalls in the halal supply chain? So I think for companies important to address the halal supply chain by design, creating your halal supply chain blueprint, and also covering halal supply chain management in your halal assurance system and also in your risk and reputation management. Now a lot of synergy advantages are left on the table. So it's time to work together with other industries within your own supply chain, but also possibly with other industry players and even competitors. Halal supply chains need to be not only robust, effective, but also efficient. I've shared with you the case study on Modern Halal Valley, which is giving you clear advantages, synergy advantages. It provides clear advantages for industries to be located in a halal cluster to produce halal for the world, because halal is moving from a product approach to a supply chain and value chain approach, which means it becomes more difficult, more complex to manage in isolation. And so as halal moves from a product approach to a supply chain and value chain approach, extremely important to prepare your organization, to prepare your industries for this new development. And halal clusters are an excellent ecosystem to make this happen. This was my presentation. I hope I gave you some insights into the importance of halal supply chains. And you can read also my book, which will be available this December on the topic of halal business management, covering all these important topics. If there are any questions, let me know. And you can also always email me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, brother. It was very enlightening and beautiful presentation, mashallah. We do have few questions. So if you can click on Q&A button on the left side, you'll be able to see the questions which have been posted.
Okay. So regarding halal integrity and also halal supply chain management, what's your opinion regarding of suppliers' declaration of conformity that might be applied to the food industry based on ISO? There are existing food safety or quality standards that address TOYIP in the industry. Halal is a certification given by a halal certification body. So it's a different certification. What is good to realize that a halal assurance system is built on top of an existing quality management system. So you need both systems, and they need to be well integrated into those supply chains. So that is question one. So I fully agree about your opinion regarding the 7 mistakes, but the problems when the auditors doing audits, not all of them check that point. So it's a challenge for halal certification bodies to determine the audit criteria. So what I see is that the halal standards mandate require that halal needs to be segregated from non-halal in transportation and storage. What happens is that this is not being checked by the halal certification bodies, that is not being enforced until today. Companies are not auditing themselves, and even also halal certification bodies are not auditing. Sometimes they might go to some suppliers that are animal-based, but beyond that, normally not. So I think it's good that halal certification bodies also learn more about halal supply chain management. They need to be educated on those important concepts of halal supply chain management. So I think still a lot of work to be done, and I've written a lot of academic papers on halal supply chain. So I think there's more and more is there available now, and there are more academics as well focusing on halal supply chain. So my suggestion is to look for more publications in that field. A third question, supply chain design is isolated from the customer, so we can't see that. Sure. Shouldn't it be more appropriate to have the logistic closer to the customer? The risk can be managed upstream, not downstream. This is the case of Cadbury. Yes, the consumer doesn't see the entire supply chain. There are a lot of initiatives on tracking and tracing, wanting to make the entire supply chain visible for the consumer. There's the question, I think, also, if that's wise, if you make it mandatory to do tracking and tracing. A lot of industries in Muslim countries don't have the technology to do that, so it might create a lot of hardship. So I think it's important to address the halal integrity in the supply chain, but I think that is a responsibility of the complexities of supply chain. I think is difficult to appreciate by the consumer, I think. So transparency not necessarily is a solution for that, I think. Thank you. Other questions, Brother Mohammed?
Yes, brother, I'm here.
Any other questions you would like me to answer or pick up?
I think no more questions have been posted now. Well, if no more questions, then we can end the session, inshallah.
Okay. Thank you so very much. It was a great honor to present at the esteemed International Halal Conference. And let me know if there are any more questions on halal supply chain management. Thank you so much. It was a great honor. Thank you.
It was our pleasure, brother. Thank you so much as well.